trying to do. I need a new intro. Like I'm thinking about doing like the Shooter McGav. This is the Shooter McGavin. I don't know. I want some. I need something new.
Shooter McGavin would not be my first choice, but hey, man, whatever you want.
Oh, dude.
What's going on, everybody? It is Wednesday night, 12 Volt Talk. We're on episode 103. And if I can keep people in my house from slamming doors, maybe then you won't hear my door over here rattle. It needs some sound deadening for the win.
Yeah, that's what I have on my door. Literally car audio sound deadening on that door back there.
See? That's boss mode right there. Does it the right way.
Yeah, wife's not too happy about it, but...
Well, Rob, this is like your 17th show this week, is that right?
Yeah, man. We keep trucking. I'm energized today. I got my... If I start slurring my words or something, I got my second COVID shot, so
yeah,
I could possibly turn into a zombie live on this episode.
Well, the good part about it is we're recording this, so if that does happen, then I'm going to monetize it and
posterity.
Yeah. You still get your half, so it'll be good.
Yeah, just give it to my family. You can keep me locked up. What's the movie Shaun of the Dead? You know how he keeps his buddy and they play video games and his buddy's a zombie?
I haven't seen. I'll be honest with you. I want to shake my head and say yeah, but I haven't seen the movie.
Oh, dude, gotta watch it. Gotta watch it.
Shaun of the Dead, and I'll put it on my list.
Yeah.
Well, we had an interesting night last night going through the Kicker World Tour virtually. I think Rob will agree some of the stuff that we saw on the virtual tour we didn't see on the real tour because we didn't go that same route, and especially some of the upstairs.
We wasted a lot. I mean, honestly, probably it's a lot of our fault because we both have squirrel syndrome, and we see some. Oh, dude, look at that old sign. We got to pick it up. Let's touch it. Grab this sign.
Let's take a picture of us touching it. Yeah, let's take a picture of us holding it. Can we fit it into our rental car? Stuff like that. So. But yeah, it was neat to go through that and see. But I'm ready. I'm ready to go back. And if you guys missed it, I'll try to do my best to remember to leave a link in the description. But we will try to send you guys back so you can watch it, because there was some mention of them finishing up an old school museum, like a place where they're going to display stuff. And Kip was saying it's not going to be specifically Kicker, but they're going to have like the car record players, which those are back in the 50s, maybe early 60s, and then 4 tracks, 8 tracks are kind of going to show the progression of the history of car audio. And he's like, it's in the works right now. And we're like, ooh, let us know when it's done. We'll be there.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm bringing them something. I haven't showed anybody. I showed of course, but
oh, nice.
Yeah,
Thomas, thank you, sir. Oh, he's wiring up some strobes.
This man is every live stream I'm on. So I think TM works probably harder than me because I'm just talking. But every live stream I'm on, he's working on something.
He's working and he's listening.
Yeah, he's actually working and listening.
Wow, that's hardcore right there. We got some more peeps up in the house. We got Detroit. Timmy from Detroit, what's up?
Timmy.
We got our usuals. We got Mark here. Buick boy, what's up?
Oh, that's a new face.
Yeah. Samuel, what's going on? Appreciate you guys showing up here.
So the turn of the outro. Oh, there's one of these. That's kind of the Big D thing, though. That's part of the intro.
Well, it used to be. I kind of took it off because I'm trying to not get no flags, no copyright.
Yeah. Good luck.
I think I'm just going to redo everything that I like and do it in my own goofy way, and that way, and say it's my own. Well, we would like to bring on our guest. What do you say, Rob? We bring on our guest for tonight.
Yeah, one of my favorite guests ever.
Right.
For the repeat now.
And this will be his second time on the show. Mr. ShawnK, and he's got a sticker on his forehead.
Nice.
What's up, fellas?
Oh, and I got the quintessential.
Oh, there we go.
It's rare.
Yeah. We didn't pay him to do this, I promise.
Special occasions.
I don't know how many of those cups I had made, maybe 10, but they were they were back in the day when you had to buy all the stuff and then you had to get it in and you had to reship it back out because I couldn't find anybody who would print on demand or whatever. So I
almost dropped mine the other day.
I didn't get very many of them. The white ones were bigger. They're like 12 ounces. I think the black ones are like 10 ounces.
Yeah.
So the white ones have the other old school. Here, this is kind of.
I don't nasty, even.
It's got this format.
Yeah, I got this one too.
Man, this thing is like grungy. Is yours
care, man?
Is yours grungy too?
Yeah, who cares? Look at it. Look at this. This is gross. This is like all my.
Yeah.
But I don't care. It's never going away.
More of these. You guys work from home and stuff. You want some mouse pads? I can probably do that again. Have to find a place that'll fulfill them though, so I don't have to package and ship because I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
So Shawn, what is going on, man? We had you on. Gosh, how long ago was that? It's been several months, right?
It's been probably a few months. Well, I think should I take this off now?
Yeah. You fulfilled your. How much do I owe you for this? Did we discuss this beforehand, or?
And Rob, just for you, buddy.
Thanks. Oh, the white tea. Yes.
There you go.
The white TV.
Dude, are we ordering those in small or something?
They're medium.
He's just getting more swole every time he comes on the freaking show, man.
I promise it's a large.
All right. So, you were on a few months ago, and we had one of those action-packed shows, and we didn't get through everything that we wanted to talk about. So we thought about, hey, let's try to expand on the conversation. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And a lot of these questions I can't with is because I'm just straight out curious, about some of the things you do. And again, we showed on the last episode, and I've still got the footage and I haven't edited it together yet, but Shawn did a really big build for Brad at Legends of Car Audio with the Civic SI, and it was 2019 Civic SI or 2020?
I'm pretty sure it was 2020 Type R.
That's a Type R.
I'm sorry. Civic Type
Don't
R.
You dare shame it with the SI.
Oh god!
Get on my level.
Single overhead cam. 1.3 liter. I'm just kidding. No, it's boosted. It's over 300 horsepower. It's a slick ride. But anyway, he did a sick install on that, and we showed some pictures. And if you guys didn't see the pictures, and you have to go back and watch the last one. And if you're listening, you still got to go back and watch the YouTube so you can see the pictures of the cool Civic. But anyway, I've got all the content. Shawn took a lot of pictures, which he always does, really good ones, and also provided me some video footage of a walk around and talked about everything he did and why he did it the way he did it, which is really cool. And honestly, that video is probably going to be pretty long, but it's really, really cool. And hopefully I'll be able to get that done here before too long so you guys can see it. But we got into that, but we didn't get a whole lot into the amplifier stuff. And Shawn's been doing old school amplifier repairs now for, was it 6 years, 5 years?
No, it's well, I guess it would depend on when we consider the beginning, right? But probably like 10 years, close to 10 years, the early stages of it.
Yeah, I guess I meant taking customer stuff because
right.
Unlike, and this Shawn and I talk about this a lot, and Rob and I talk about this a lot too, but there's usually an onslaught of technicians out there who come online and, hey, I repair amps. And then all of a sudden, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people will go to them and they'll get stacks and stacks of amps. And then months later, the guy usually gets overwhelmed, and Rob and I, we call it the solder syndrome. It's like the fumes from the solder, and it's just, it makes people wacky. I don't know. I think people just get overwhelmed because, as Shawn will describe here in a minute, if you're a tech and you're a good tech, you don't have any lack of work to do, right?
That's very true. Very true.
So, you got to actually have the foresight to tell somebody, I cannot take your equipment right now.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what he's been saying lately too, that I can't.
That's where I'm at right now.
You've got enough.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, what is your approximate backlog on amplifiers?
Well, typically it would be about 3 months. Okay.
Now, I mean, the number of how many that you have stacked up that you're waiting to.
Oh, the number. Man, I can't.
You're talking about like
I can't
40
count.
dozens.
More than that. More than
40.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. But I have one particular client that we all know very well that he just stacks and stacks and stacks. So his stuff is always here. And I'll go through his every now and then and try to knock it down a little bit. But then I also will have some other clientele that might send several at a time, right? So they'll have a small stack. And then there's also like the onesie twosies. You'll just get 1 or 2 here and there, and that's just ever revolving as well. So, if we're counting that particular client, then yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you got me and Derek like, hey, Shawn, what's going on, man? Hey,
I try to give him the easy stuff most of the time, the things that are easy, but I don't know if they're really easy or not. But like the PPI stuff and the Rockford stuff, usually he does so many of those. I think he could probably do them with his eyes closed. I'm not sure about the paste though on the PPIs. I have to do that.
Awful.
Yeah, it sucks. But so the curiosity question that I had is, with today's amps, probably 95% of amplifiers that are out there that you buy today, maybe even higher, are Class D. You typically, and I think maybe only exclusively, work on the older Class AB style amps. What is your reason for that?
Well, it's definitely not exclusively. It is certainly the majority. But I mean, I've worked on plenty of Class D, including your Rockford BD series, and I guess you could probably look at it as the old school Class D. Like, I'll still work on them. I kind of limit myself. I will go up to like a 1500 watt amplifier, Class D amplifier. Like, that's kind of my limit. One reason is there are plenty of techs out there that's what they do. Like, they're day in, day out. They do the big stuff, the big 2K, 4K, 8K, amplifiers. And there's several people that I know of that's what they do day to day. I kind of got into this niche of repairing and restoring the old school amplifiers, which the vast majority of them will be Class AB amplifiers. So therefore, it's typically an AB amp, but I've had my fair share of Class D. It's just not it's not the newer stuff,
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I mean, I think it's safe to say, with the number of those that not only were sold over the years, but also the number who have been survivors, or maybe still really good physical condition, but just maybe need some internal tweaking. Obviously, there's enough there to keep you busy, and not only that, there's enough demand from people that still, people can have things repaired by you and still sell them. So there's obviously some room there somewhere. It must be, or it wouldn't make any sense to do that. Now, I know sometimes in the cases with some of the stuff I've done, and maybe some of the stuff other people have done, you may do some restoration type work. Like I've had one that you've colored and and reran the wires like underneath the board and just made it look really clean. So things like that, understandably are a little more complex than the standard repair. But like, if you had to estimate, say I've got an Orion 225 HCCA that I need to work on, and just a rough estimate, how much time do you allocate to an amplifier like that? Just a 2-channel Class AB amp. How much time is that? Something that you can knock out in a day, or is it multiple days, or what's the typical time frame?
Yeah, if it's just a basic repair, or even a restoration, which, when we say restoration, typically that means a full capacitor, job. Like, we're taking out all the electrolytic capacitors and putting all new electrolytic capacitors back in. And in addition to that, I'll do a board cleaning. And, so I'll clean up all the old thermal compound, or the thermal pad, whatever is there. And I'll put down new compound or a new sill pad or something like that, whatever the amp uses. Clean the potentiometers, make sure that they're fine, check the bias of the amplifier. So that's like a typical restoration. And something like a 225, which is a relatively small amplifier, that can be done in a day for sure. Something that, since we're on this topic, something that that I would like for everybody to know and understand from a technician's aspect is, and this is like this for many businesses, it's not just the actual work that you're doing that takes time, right? It's dealing with messages and emails and phone calls and testing the amplifier when it's done, packing it up. Sometimes packing takes forever. Creating shipping labels, taking the amplifier back, dropping it off to be shipped out. All of those things take time, in addition to actually doing the work on the amplifier. So you have to kind of consider, it's business, right? So that goes with it. But that's something I kind of wanted to get out there.
Yeah, I think people may forget that at times because, in our case, when we create content like YouTube content, people see an 8-minute video and they're like, wow, they follow you through the video thinking this is all done in 8 minutes.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing. People can't really grasp unless you do like a behind the scenes of the day showing all the different components of what you do. But, yeah, I mean, I've tried to talk you into videoing your stuff and figuring out a way to do that. I know it's a lot of work, and I know it would be some work, but man, that would be so interesting. If nothing else, just do a live stream as you're working on it, and just talk and say, "Hey, I'm doing this," kind of like Sam does, but with the Class AB.
Right. I get a kick out of it because for so many years, Derek has been like, "Oh, once you do a YouTube video, So like 1 minute, Derek's like, "It's so great, do a YouTube video." And then in the very next sentence, he's like, "I just did this video and it took me 148 hours. And I'm like, oh, that's not a good sales pitch, D.
We can pare it down, man. We can pare it down with some strategically placed cameras. You can save some time. But yeah, well, it just depends
need
on
28 cameras like Bear Grylls or something.
That's
right.
And the little foot controls to switch between the two. Oh, what's up, Mark Cardy, Fabrication up in the house.
What up?
So along with that last question, and Rob, I'm not trying to take over here, so please you take the next ones because I know you can see the questions too. But like, is there any particular amp, either brand or model, if there's one of those, and specifically, that you tend to repair more than others?
Can I guess first before he says?
Please.
Okay, you guys know I love Orion amplifiers. But back in the day, we used to call them O'Frians for a reason. I don't know if this is going to be the one. It's either that or it's probably PPI because you guys kind of know how I feel about PPI amps.
Well, unfortunately, you're wrong, Rob. Although, I've worked on countless Orions and countless of PPI. If there's one brand at the top of the list, and it has nothing to do with the reliability. It just has to do with the fact that there were so many of them sold. It's Rockford. It's just
dagger to the heart.
Well, it's like Sean said. There were more of them sold, and more people abused them. Probably they dipped them in water and all that. So you got to take that into account too, Rob. Don't be hating on my brand.
For sure, they were beat up. So many of them were just beat up, hardcore. And also the fact that Rockford's been around for so long. I mean, they've been mass produced, producing, but also like they were probably the first company to really mass produce car audio amplifiers. I would say. I mean, that's a guess, but I'd be willing to bet on it.
Well, it puts a lot of stress on an amplifier to be able to put out its rated power plus more. So I'm just saying.
Shots fired.
Especially one that's 25 or 30 years old, right?
Hey, I only vouched for 225, so it didn't
I
make
like
its
the
ratings.
225 too, so I'm not gonna deny you on that one.
They're awfully pretty. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, for sure. Shipping is a pain. I hate shipping. I really hate shipping.
Bro, I'm gonna let you go to the next one
All
because I've
right.
been talking too much.
No, man, I was just letting you go. So, which one do you want me to go in the repair and amplifier section?
After the
Yeah.
amps
I
that
know
you've
where we
repaired.
get, but I just would
No,
say because I like to stray off. But
hey, you do whatever you want to do. I'm here.
I
I'm
do.
here to listen and to enjoy.
All right, I want to hear the crazy amp repair stories. Do you got something in the bank that sticks out to you besides the earthquake that I sent to you that you spent 1,000,000 hours working on?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of those. I mean, I think the crazy ones are probably like the custom jobs more than anything. I mean, yeah, there's some amps out there that have been headaches. I'd say there's probably less than a half a dozen, definitely less than half a dozen that I actually couldn't repair for whatever reason. Like it just didn't work out. And those suck. I hate it when I can't figure out a problem. But the crazy ones are the custom jobs because you have to figure out how to do it. Whether it's modding the circuitry inside the amplifier, or it's similar to like the Colossus that I did for you, Derek, where it's stripping the finish completely, figuring out like this has nothing to do with electronics, but figuring out the best way to strip anodizing. And I found out one of the best ways was lye, so I had to go down to Lowe's and get lye, and I put it in a big bucket with some water and soak it in, in order to, and that was just so that I could refinish the heatsink. And that had nothing to do with actually getting into the amplifier. Building the custom side plates, which is very popular. A lot of people want bonding posts on their old school amps, and you can't just really put a bonding post most of the time. You can't just put a bonding post on a stock side plate. So like I have to make the side plates from scratch. And a lot of times with like old Hyphonics amplifiers, they're not just a square side plate. There's all kinds of curves and shapes and everything. And so I have to basically use my fabrication skills in order to make those new side plates and have them look and fit like a factory piece. Plexiglass on the bottom plates. I don't know. There's every amp's a little bit different when it comes to the custom work. So those definitely take some time for sure. And those are ones that I will work in and out of those. I won't really go from start to finish on them. I'll do some work one day, and then I'll do normal work maybe the next day, and just kind of weave in and out. And then at some point in time, this custom amp will get done. So
you need one of those laser cutters like Mead has for cutting out those end plates. That would be sweet, wouldn't it?
I would love it.
Laguna, if you're listening, hook them up. I'm sure those things are like 40 grand or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm sure it got room for it in his shop. Have you ever got an amp that like had cockroaches or something in it? You don't have to name names.
Oh yeah, spiders.
Dude.
Yeah.
I could deal with the spiders. Like if there's a cockroach in there, schoolgirl mode.
Well,
everything's been dead so far, so at least that's good.
Well, I must say, from a testing aspect, like when I used to let people send me stuff and I would test it, I learned pretty quickly that you always open the bottom of the amp and look in, because sometimes there's stuff in there, and like the case of the amp that I just tested, it was new. It has a piece of metal that has fallen into the amp.
Yes, right.
It's like you don't really want that going on. But yeah, I mean, cobwebs and all kind of stuff in there that just impedes the airflow and stuff is not good either. But yeah, that's something you definitely need to do. So far as your like well, you kind of talked about it a little bit. I don't want to have to cover up too much of the same thing, but like, I'm Joe Q customer, right? And this is not during the time when ShawnK is not taking amplifiers in, which is the current time we're at. And so what is the process like? So somebody hits you up via messenger or email or whatever, and then kind of walk me through the 10,000 foot view of the process of how all that works.
Okay, so obviously everyone's a little bit different, but you know, the nice thing is that most of my clientele comes from our community, you know, which is great. So it's typically a messenger, sometimes an email, sometimes a phone call. But you know, they'll contact me with whatever model, and I'll ask them a little bit about it. You know, if they know what the problem is currently, because sometimes they don't even know at all. Sometimes they don't even care. They want to just send it in and see if it works, and if it needs anything, just do it. Sometimes I'll ask for pictures of the board. There are certain amplifiers that I get concerned about damage on the board if it's like a hole burnt right through the PCB or something like that. So you know, if the client's comfortable, I'll ask them to take the bottom plate off and send a couple good pictures. Once we get to the point where they can send the amplifier in and I receive it, first things first is just a visual inspection. I need to see for myself if there's anything right off the bat that sticks out, and visual cues are prevalent all over the place in bad amplifiers. It's pretty rare that it's possible, but it's pretty rare that you won't see any physical sign of damage somewhere in the amplifier. And after, you know, having a trained eye, after seeing so many, you can look at the small details and you can pick out, you know, okay, well, the power supply is bad in this one, or output stage is bad in this one, or both are bad, or whatever. And from there, I mean, it's we could go so many different venues depending on what's wrong with the amplifier. But typically, the first thing you kind of need to do is get the power supply up and running, because you can't really test the output stage until the power supply is running. Sometimes I'll just bang the whole thing out, and then, for the lack of a better term, hope for the best and put it on the, you know, we'll bench it and make sure it's going through its paces. Typically it's fine. Sometimes you'll run into another issue, which you won't know until certain things are repaired first. So once the amplifier is, or at least I believe is fully repaired, at that point we need to put the PCB back in the heatsink, clamp it down, and you know, you do your full test. You know, we need to check for bias, we need to check for DC offset, we need to check for, I don't have a dyno or anything like that, or an AMM1. Basically the way that I check for power, it's not extravagant by any means, but obviously I have an oscilloscope, so basically I just make sure that the amp is clipping at or near rail voltage. If it's clipping at or near rail voltage, then it's going to produce maximum power that it can do. And of course, I do a sound check. You know, I'll go through all the gain knobs and the buttons and this and that, make sure everything's working there. Load it down to its lowest recommended impedance that it can handle. Make sure the amp heats up, and just run it for a while. Just make sure it's stable, and then at that point it's good to go. Really, pack it back up.
So from a customer perspective, how is it like impossible to give an estimate just by them telling you, or you know what some of the amps kind of need, and you say, well, maybe in this range, and then again you get it in, obviously it's just an estimate, you don't know until you see it,
right?
But I know everybody wants to know, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah, my prices are pretty generic. You're right. Every scenario is different. But if we're talking just a regular basic repair, we're not talking about restoration or custom work or anything like that. I basically say for your average amplifier, it's usually between $100 to $150. If it's over 150, when I get on a bench and I think it's going to be over 150, then I'll contact you. My minimum is $50. If it gets on the bench and there's nothing wrong with it, it's still $50.
The bench fee is what we call that, right?
Exactly. And it sounds like a lot, but
it should be $100, really.
Yeah, I mean, some people would think 50 is too high, but I still got to, I have to test it. I have to pack it back up. I had to go through the conversations. So, yeah.
Real quick, Behan Beats, $5. Thank you, sir. And also David, thank you for
appreciate it
sending in the cheddar. So it's funny because, and I don't mean to sway the conversation to me, but just thinking about what you're talking about and the steps you go through. I get people ask all the time, "Hey, will you test my blah blah?" I'm like, well, think of it this way, right? If you're gonna send me something, pay for shipping to me and back, and then if it's not something that I really want to test or going to make a good video, are you willing to pay for my time? So for a $200 amp, are you going to be willing to pay $200 for, here, test, there, back? Most people know.
Right.
So that's why I usually don't even bring it up, because not only that, I'm not a technician. So if I'm testing and it blows up, then hey, it's on you, the Joe Q customer. So since it's happened before, that's what's made me gun shy about even doing that part. But I think in a lot of ways people think, hey, since you have an amp dyno, that you like to sit around all day and test people's amplifiers. Granted, if I was retired and independently wealthy, y'all could send them things in all day, every day, as long as you had a return label, and I would do it. But we're not quite there yet, right, Rob?
Yeah, for sure.
Almost.
Well, especially if you want a video out of it. That's the hard part.
Well, and the other thing is, too, I've done them before without a video, but then after you finish, you're kind of like, well, dude, that was stupid. I set up the amp. I did all the tests. Why didn't I video it, right?
Yeah.
Even for Willie Williston.
Well, now. But still, I mean, that's even,
it's time consuming.
You put video, capturing a video is not the problem. It's editing it down and all that stuff. And that's where you get into the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, Shawn, with you going over all that, I mean, you can easily see why you can get backed up so quickly, because even with a super efficient flow of everything you just went through, I mean, there's still a lot of time built in there, right? And even like you said, the things that people don't think about, like packing, you pack amplifiers like a boss. I mean, you use the pool noodles, you wrap it up with cellophane to keep it tight. You put plenty of padding in the box. So understandably, you want to make sure that you put all this work and effort into a repair, that you're not going to ship something that's going to get screwed up in shipping, because you have to assume anytime you ship something, take it from about 3 or 4 feet off the ground and drop it. And if you feel like it's going to break, you haven't packed it well enough.
Right.
Don't blame UPS. Don't blame FedEx. I'm just telling you. And the other thing you don't do, soapbox here, don't write fragile, or don't put a sticker that says fragile, because I can tell you, I've known people that work at these places. They say that is key for tossing it. Off the soapbox. Sorry. So let's get a little deeper into the amplifiers themselves, right? So we've talked about the Class AB, and that's usually the ones that you repair, or the older Class D. Talk about the topology, the Class AB topology, so people maybe can get a better understanding of a Class AB and how it works, and some of the importance of the function.
Okay, sure. So quickly before we get to the topology, since we're talking about car audio amplifiers, obviously we need to understand that the car audio amplifier has 2 sections: power supply and then your output stage, which is the output stage is the actual amplifier itself, right? It's there's two halves to this. So now we're going to talk about just the amplifier portion of it, and this is true for a car as well as home. There's really no difference between a car amp and a home amp besides the type of power supply that's in it, so the typical class AB amplifier, the topology that's been used for decades now, was basically designed by I don't know if he was a professor or an engineer, but his last name was Lin, and it's called the Lin 3-stage power amplifier. Okay, and these 3 stages involve the input stage, the voltage amplifier, and then your output stage. Okay, so there's basically 3 sections, and those 3 sections combined together make the amplifier. And the reason why there's 3 individual stages was because he found that it produced the lowest distortion and the best performance possible, at least at that point in time. And this was back in like the mid 50s. But he had it right, because from that point on, as I said, for decades, all the way up until now, even with current Class AB amplifiers, the vast majority, 99% of them, use this Lin 3-stage topology. Okay, so the input stage of the amplifier, and I'm not talking about the preamp stage. Okay, that's its own entity. I'm just talking about just the amplifier. The input stage is comprised of what's called a differential pair. Okay, so it's 2 transistors with other associated circuitry to bias those transistors so they're on and everything. But basically, it's 2 transistors. One transistor takes your signal in, right? And then the other transistor will essentially see a portion of the voltage that's going out of the amplifier. That's basically negative feedback, okay? And the reason why you do this is because if there's anything that's not correct on the output, negative feedback goes into this differential pair, and they can correct it right at the very beginning, okay? So for instance, if the amplifier is just sitting at idle, and for some reason there's like 2 millivolts of DC offset on the output, with the amp just sitting there, once you hook up negative feedback to the input differential pair, it will take away that 2 volts of offset. Okay, so it corrects it right from the beginning. I know that's techie. I don't know how better to explain it. But negative feedback is something that is extremely important. Almost every single operational amplifier or op amp needs negative feedback to work correctly. It's no different than an amplifier. An amplifier is a big op amp, right?
So it's like pre-crime. So it's understanding that something's going to happen before it really happens.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm trying to break it down for the big dummies out there, you know?
You didn't even mention a movie.
I didn't mention the movie.
I can't remember the name of it with Tom Cruise, but you know what I'm
talking about. Not Vanilla Sky. It's the other one. I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah, me too. But not Mission Impossible.
No.
No. Yeah, I know it's
the other one. Yeah.
I can't think of the name either. Somebody's going to post it in the chat here, and we'll feel better. But
it's on the tip of my tongue as well.
But yeah, so just like an overall 20,000 foot view. So especially in a car, right? You've got 12 volts coming in. So the power supply section has to boost that voltage, right? Because
yes,
you're not able to take a 12 volt and get enough out. Well, of course, some of the old amps did because they just allowed kind of straight through, right? They didn't boost up the voltage. They just kind of took that in and.
Yeah, you could split that 12 volts in half, right? You can offset, that 12 volts so that you have a bias of 6 volts. Now you can go +6 or you can go -6.
Right.
But you still have 12 volts. That's all you have for power.
Yeah. So the drawback we have is from car audio is the fact that we have very low voltage come in versus a home. You have 120, or if you're in different parts of the world, 240 coming in. So you don't have to massage that voltage as nut. And in some cases, you're stepping it down instead of stepping it up, right?
Yes, you are massaging it, but you're doing the opposite. You're actually stepping it down, and you need these big monster transformers to do that, right? So that's why your home amplifiers are so heavy. It's because they have this big monster transformer that has to step the voltage down to a workable voltage.
Right.
Right.
Just like the poles outside of your house, I mean, there's transformers there.
Yep.
You know, so if you guys can't think of it any other way, you have to think about how those have to work to be able to distribute the power throughout, you know, for electricity in the neighborhoods and stuff if they're above ground. I know most people have underground now, but there's still transformer boxes. There's one out in front of my yard.
Yeah, me too.
That does the voltage modification, amplification, whatever you want to call it.
Yep. But we're talking about the power supplies right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I was trying to get people an idea of just a very high level idea of, you know, power coming in. It has to be boosted up, and then the stuff you're talking about, you know, you're checking the feedback and stuff of the transistor pairs and those working together and singing Kumbaya. But, you know, as we're talking about that, you know, I'm thinking now, like, we made the change starting in the mid 90s or really later 90s for most companies from class AB to class D. So class D it's like anything, right? It has its pros and it has its cons, right?
Absolutely.
So when I'm thinking of a pro for a car, if it's more efficient, then that's going to be better for a lot of people because you need less electrical, right? So moving from class AB to class D, the logical reason for that is more efficient means you get more power per your input of current. Okay?
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So with a class AB, there's a lot of people that say, well, just like in home audio, class A is the best, right? Because it's always on, it's always at the top voltage level. Class AB sounds better than class D. That's the saying. A lot of people say that.
Right.
There's a lot of argument about it.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of where I'm going with this.
But fixing to put you on the spot.
No,
Sean,
just
I'm waiting for the question.
No, I'm just trying to get like to the efficiency part. You can explain the efficiency of an AB, kind of, and how that compares to, you know, the newer class Ds and how they function.
So efficiency is important really only if there's a certain amount of output that you're looking for, right? If your output is within limits of what your charging system is capable of, it doesn't really matter that much, does it? Really? I mean, does it? Right? And I would say that we are kind of getting in a different era where, and you know, YouTube helps with this and everything, that everybody wants these massive systems, massive. And of course, at that point, big power is important, and efficiency does obviously play a factor for sure. You know, but I would say on a stock charging system, and Brad's Type R is a perfect example of this. His whole charging system stock, and that system jams. I mean, it jams. It's all 100% stock system, charging system, I should say. So the power limits are within reason for that car, okay, and what we're looking to do. But he's obviously not going to win an SPL competition with it. It is what it is. So with Class AB, the efficiency of a Class AB amp can actually physically not be greater than 79%. That's best. So like Rob, when you would show me that amp that you were testing the other day, like that was pretty pretty impressive because I'd never seen one that high for a Class AB amp. And that's, like I was saying to you in that message, that amplifier was actually pushing the physical limits of how efficient it could possibly be. And this all has to do with basically, I don't know how to say this without getting too technical, but the conduction of the transistors in a Class AB, it will only allow it to go that high, okay? In a Class D amplifier, you're switching the transistors on 100%, which is called saturation. So there is no voltage drop from the rail to the output of that Class D amplifier when it's playing music, okay? That's not the case with a Class A amp or a Class AB amp. You can kind of visualize, in a way, the transistor when it's of a Class AB amp, when a sine wave is playing through the system, there's a voltage drop across that transistor. And whenever there's a voltage drop and current going through, you're going to have power dissipation. And that's why these amplifiers heat up. Power dissipation is heat. And there's a sweet spot for Class AB amplifiers where they become the most efficient. Okay, and there's also the vice versa of that, the opposite of that, where the amplifier will be the least efficient. And the least efficient that a Class AB amplifier will be is at approximately 1/3 to 1/2 its output power. Okay, that's when the amplifier is going to get hot. It's kind of funny because if you're cranking on a Class AB amplifier, you're really beating on it. It's actually more efficient. It actually probably won't be as hot as if when you're just listening to it at a moderate level, everyday, just an everyday moderate level. That's when the amplifier is actually going to be least efficient and producing the most heat. And that's just the physics of it. There's really no way around it.
Yeah, and to kind of tell the story, so I'm testing a mystery amp. And I test it, and I have it loaded down to 2 ohms mono. I get 79% efficiency, all channels driven. And I'm like, there's no way. I've never tested a Class AB amp that was 79% efficient. So in my mind, I think there's like a Volkswagen situation happening. They're trying to cheat the dyno. Something's going on. So I send a picture to Derek. I was like, does this look like a Class AB amp to you? Because it does to me. Then I'm like, okay, I got to step past D, see what Shawn thinks. And it unless they're hiding some kind of Class D amp somewhere where you can't see it at all, it's crazy. And I'm going to retest that amp, but I'm going to change my batteries and make sure everything's cool because something's going on. I use 2 different clamps to test that. So
it's quite interesting. Definitely.
Yeah, that is interesting. Another interesting test I saw, and it's related to what you just talked about, Shawn. I think it was PS Audio, Rob, and I think wasn't it Jason that sent us that link where he did the clamp. So he clamped a system that they just finished, which was, I think it had a 1500 or 2000 watt sub amp, and then like a Zapco 150x6 for the front end, and he kept the clamp on the power wire, and they played music, and he just showed it, and it got 10, 12, 15, I think maybe 25 or 30 amps at the most when it was cranked up. So my
That's
comment
because
to
those
him,
Zapco amps don't put out the power they say.
well,
the
shot. But I mean, part of it I think is, it's something that you brought up earlier, Shawn, when you were talking about Brad's Civic. If it depends on your goals, it depends on what type of music you listen to. If you're listening to, rebased that have 30-second bass notes, then you're going to pull a lot of current, right? Because your amplifier is trying to play that essential sine wave. But if you're listening to music that is dynamic, right? It's bouncing up and down and everything, and you're pulling some current. But overall, like your average in a lot of cases is really not all that much if you clamp, to see what it is. Now, again, it depends on the type of music you listen to, how bass heavy it is, how long the bass lines are. But if you're one of these people that just listens to rock, if you listen to, I won't say classical because some of that's got some long bass notes depending on what you're listening to, but jazz, things like that where the music is dynamic, I think in a lot of cases you're being oversold with the electrical systems that you're needing. And I'll take part of the blame because I don't do a good enough job explaining when I test an amp that, hey, what I'm showing you here is a sine wave. This is worst case scenario. This is not something you're going to, this Orion pulled 270 amps and it's a, XTR 2500. I need a 270 amp alternator. Maybe not, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to understand. But again, it's one of those things that it's not something that you can just say across the board. Hey, if you're using this amp, you only need this much electrical. It's totally dependent on
many
the music
factors.
you listen to. And the music you listen to, and
how efficient is your low frequency system? How efficient is your subwoofer?
Right.
The resonant, the transfer function of the vehicle versus the music that you listen to. If you listen to like some old school rap or something that constantly has 40, 50 hertz bass tones, and you have a vehicle that the transfer function is also at 50 hertz, beautiful, right? There's so many factors. I mean, it's so many factors.
Yeah, I think that's why it's just always interesting when people make comments or suggestions based on very little information. People ask, what do I need with this? Or what sub do I need with this amp? I'm like, that's like going to a car lot and saying, which car do I need? Or not even going to a car lot, just going on to one of those search engines and say, I need a 4-door car. Well, here's 75 different models, right? Choose whichever one.
Well,
but people like to have the answer though too, and you can't blame them, right?
Yeah.
They're not as enthusiastic or into it as much as we are. They just want something that'll work.
Just want it to work.
In a lot of cases, you pretty much can't choose the wrong thing. Well, you can, but go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, what Shawn's kind of getting at is you need to think about your total system efficiency. You probably don't need, I can say you don't need 2,000 watts on your sub. If you prepare your system properly, you have a 95 dB efficient subwoofer in a very efficient enclosure versus an 85 dB subwoofer with the triple pack spiders that can barely move on less than 2,000 watts. If you plan your system out correctly, you don't need that power. But today, power is so cheap that's the first thing people think of is power's cheap. I can get the subs relatively cheap. We're going to try to overcome it. But what they don't think is the power on the back end is cheap. The power on the front end is not cheap. It's not cheap to buy an alternator. It's not cheap to buy 10 lithium batteries. And, in my case, 20 runs of 2-watt CCA wire.
Right.
Good point. Let's get back to the amps real quick. So we talked a little bit about efficiency. What about, and I've heard this stated wrong, I probably said it wrong before. It's not dampening factor. It's damping factor.
I've done the same thing. It's so easy to do.
I think everybody has misstated that word.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is probably one of the most misunderstood maybe things about an amplifier, because some people think it's something, but in actuality it's all about the impedance of the amplifier versus the load that it's driving, right? So you want to have one that's as flat as possible. And I don't, maybe you can explain what I'm saying there better, because I know that part of it. But a lot of people think that how the speaker reacts to the amplifier is a direct relationship of how the damping factor on the amplifier. In other words, if it's a high damping factor, the speaker is going to react in a more controlled way.
Right. That's what people believe. Right.
Right. So maybe you can explain it better.
Right. Okay. So, you pretty much had the definition correct. The definition is the the ratio of the load impedance versus the amplifier's output impedance. Okay, and since we are talking about solid state amplifiers, which is almost all of the amplifiers that we deal with. So non-solid state amplifiers would be like tube amplifiers, okay, which we don't really deal with tube amplifiers. Even those that we see aren't really a tube amplifier, they're hybrids. The tube would be placed at a section before the amplifier's output stage. So we can even really consider those hybrids as solid state amplifiers. And the reason why I'm saying solid state amplifiers is because the output impedance of a solid state amplifier is very, very low, extremely low, 0.04 ohms or 0.01 ohm or something like that. It's very low. So something to think about is if your amplifier's output impedance is, let's say, 0.01 ohm, okay? Once you add a speaker wire to that, speaker wire can have 1/10 of an ohm of a resistance, which is still very low. But that speaker wire has 10 times more of effect on the damping factor than the amplifier itself, right? So it's not to say that damping factor isn't important. It's just what you need to understand is that what value is necessary, and that value is actually a very low damping factor, right? I'm not going to throw a figure at you, but it's very low. Like when you see an amplifier brand that says we have a damping factor of 800, let's just say, it sounds very high. Well, I promise you that damping factor of 800 isn't going to sound any better than this amplifier with a damping factor of 50. Right, that's not the damping factor that's going to make a difference in that system. It sounds like it's very important. It does, and that's part of marketing, right? But
because I've seen them before that say like 1,000, and I'll see other ones that say 50. But I also see a difference a lot of times in frequency. Sometimes they'll say damping factor 100 at 50 hertz, and I'll see another one that says damping factor 1,000 and doesn't say what frequency.
Right, it's hard to compare. Right.
So
exactly.
I guess depends on how that impedance flow works on the output. They could pick the best frequency and say, hey, that's where it's the highest.
And it's still marketing. It's still marketing.
It's peak power. Because I've never once been able to correlate damping factor to an amp that performs better on subs, but I can with my ears and eyes see an amp that controls a sub better than another amp.
Sure. Yeah, that's possible. And that all of that has to do with how the amplifier is just designed overall, not just damping factor. How much feedback is it using? Because you can actually you can throw a ton of feedback inside of an amplifier. And this is kind of why I wanted to talk about those 3 stages before, because all this stuff plays together. You could throw a ton of feedback into an amplifier and raise the damping like crazy, right? But when you, how do I want to explain this? When you do that, when you throw a ton of feedback back, there are other negative side effects that you don't want in an amplifier, okay? So I guess I just wanted to point out that there's this overemphasis that it's like something magical, or this belief that it's something magical, and it's not really that important. One of the YouTubers that I watch in the audio realm, his name is John Audio Tech. I don't know if any of you.
I watch him.
Okay.
Yep.
So excellent. I love watching his stuff.
Me too.
He has a fantastic video on damping factor, and you should watch that because he explains it very well with a full demonstration and everything. Yes, I've always looked at it like, well, not always, but I love this. As I explained just a few minutes ago, I love this visual of the speaker wire having more of an effect on the damping than the actual amp itself. Just look at it that way. If you could tell me that your speaker wire is negatively affecting the way that that the amplifier is controlling that subwoofer. That's something to think about, right? Like, so.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, so Bose years ago, as much people want to talk bad about them, they took the specs off. They said, we're not talking frequency response. We're not talking, I mean, the only thing they really show was impedance, right? Is this will work with 4 to 8 ohm capable amplifier. They didn't really talk about anything else. So are we being cheated to the fact that, let me see if I can figure out how to ask this question better. Are we able to determine any better function of an amplifier based on the specs that we're given? And what I mean by that, that's a very vague question, but what I mean is, if I'm looking at 2 different amplifiers to power my mids and highs, obviously mids and highs are a little bit more concerning to a lot of people as far as quality goes than the low end, right? Because you can have a dirty subwoofer amp and whatever, but my mids and highs have to be crystal clear. So can I look at specs, or can we not correlate these specifications with this amp sounding better than that? Is that a trick question? Because I think we all know the answer, but you see what I'm getting at? So what is a person to do? Because they want me to tell them. They want Rob to tell them, does this amplifier sound good? I don't like to go down that road because I've got 2 of these, but my 2 don't have the same frequency response and everything that yours have,
Right.
So I don't like to be the one that tells people what sounds good. You have to hear it yourself. Right. But what I'm getting at is, are we being tricked with these specs and these numbers and these, damping factor, slew rate, all this other stuff? Is there anything there that correlates or not? Or do we even know?
Well, I could tell you we're being tricked for marketing since the very beginning. There's no question about that.
Never ends, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, if we were all in marketing, we would be doing the same thing.
Yeah. So it's frustrating from, me being a consumer too. How do you compare? I mean, obviously if you go with a brand that is reputable, then you know that they put time and effort, the kickers, the Rockfords, the JLs, the audio controls. I don't want to miss anybody, but the ones we think about when we think about quality amplification,
I think that's very important.
Yeah, that we know that they take that into consideration. So am I doing a disservice by showing people how much power an amplifier puts out if we're not worrying about some of these other factors? Maybe. But
I have an argument. That you should tell every viewer what you think about how the amp sounds. And this is why I do it. Because I think of it like video game reviews. Not all video game reviewers are going to like the same type of video games you do. But when you find a person that does like the same, like I played Mario, I like Mario. He also likes Metroid. He likes Zelda. He likes the games I like. So I know that I'm probably going to like what this person likes. So if they've bought 1 or 2 of the amps that I said, hey, I thought this sounded good, or they bought a couple amps and I thought, well, it really didn't sound that great or impressive to me. Now they know, okay, Hi-Fi kind of has the same taste in me in amplifiers. So I'll kind of go with his recommendation.
I mean, it's a valid point, Rob. I mean, I think that's well taken.
Opinions are important. I don't think there's anything to discredit with an opinion, no matter who it is.
Yeah. Well, that was just me throwing that out there, but I know we've already gone past an hour, but I got a couple more of these questions I'm really interested in, so we're going to keep going if that's okay with you guys.
Wait, when can we get to the fun stuff?
Well, we'll get there in a minute. This is fun.
No, this is not
fun. These 2 especially, really fun. The FET versus the BJT is one, but the other one that I'm really interested in is the Soundstream stuff, the Darlington versus the triple Darlington, because I've always wondered what the heck that means. But let's do the FET and BJTs first and talk about those real quick, if you can do it kind of quick, and then we'll talk about the Darlington and triple Darlington.
Okay, yeah, quick and dirty. I guess so when it comes to transistors, modern day transistors, you have basically two types. You have the bipolar junction transistor, which is the BJT, and you have the field effect transistor, or the FET. Okay, so I guess just the one thing I want to put out there is that just because you see a transistor, please don't just call it a FET, because there's a very good chance it's not a FET. It is a transistor. I learned that
a while back. Thank you, Shawn. I call them transistors now, just like the
perfect.
Just like the used to call it a toroid.
Transformer. Yeah.
Right. Call it a transformer now, because it's not always a toroid. Is that right?
Right. The toroid is just the donut, and then as soon as you wind the wires around it, it becomes a transformer.
Okay.
Right.
See, we're all learning here, folks. Amp Talk with Shawn King.
So and they're even though they're both transistors, you can't just swap one out for the other. Okay, the vast majority of the power supplies in our car audio amplifiers use FETs, right? And there's a reason for it. They're very fast units. They're very powerful units, so you can switch them on and off very fast. And likewise, you will see FETs in all, I believe all, of Class D amplifiers in the output stage. Okay, because same situation, you have to switch them on and off really fast, and they're very powerful. Now, in much older car audio amplifiers, some of the power supplies you still use BJTs because FETs weren't really available back then. Not on a mass scale, anyways. Not as prevalent as BJTs were, because BJTs have been around for much longer. However, the output stage of Class AB amps, many of them will use BJTs. So like all of your Phoenix Gold, all of your Hyphonics back in the day, many other Lanzar, many others. They all use BJT transistors. And I mean, I can go into detail the difference between the two. It probably doesn't really matter. I guess just the important thing is to understand that if you ever get into amp repair or anything like that, you can't just take a FET and put it in the place of the BJT. It's not going to work.
Now, I remember when Rockford made a big deal in the mid 80s.
Yes.
Remember when they went from bipolar over to MOSFET?
Right.
And they even put it, bold letters on their power series. We're MOSFET Power 1000.
Marketing. Here we go again. It's marketing. It works. Sure. A FET obviously a FET can be used in a Class AB. Obviously, it can be, because Rockford's been doing it for years and years and years. You have to design the circuitry a little bit different. FETs are basically voltage-driven devices. BJTs are current-driven devices. And the argument is that BJTs are a more linear device, so possibly they sound better. And the FET is a more robust, rugged, strong device, but not quite as linear as a BJT. So,
and on top of that, the new ones that a lot of the Brazilian style amps use, they say are the same ones that welders use or something. That what is it?
IGBTs? Yep. Yeah, insulated gate bipolar transistor. Yep. And I have yet to see an amplifier with one in it myself. So, yeah.
Rob, I'm gonna let you get to the fun stuff then, unless you want to do the after show, or are we just gonna keep going?
Yeah, we're just gonna keep going. We'll try the new format. Well,
okay.
This is only semi-fun, but if you had to, if you could give every old school collector one piece of advice, Shawn, what would it be about anything? Amplifiers, subs, speakers, anything?
I know what he's going to say, and it's related to speakers, but I won't say it for him. Because I've still got some old speaker songs, so don't say that.
Any advice for old gear? I think probably the only thing that comes to mind is it's probably going to need servicing. Whether now or in the near future, more than likely. So
better to do it before you install it fully in your system with flush trim panels and all this stuff.
Rob has brought that up before. It's like the old stuff is really cool to look at, cool to play with.
Yeah.
Put it in a daily. Yeah.
But if you have Sean go through it, then you're in good shape.
Yeah, you're back to the many years of running. But yeah, I would agree. If you're going to use it, definitely have somebody go through it. That's a good. I know the other thing you were going to say about old speakers, but I'm glad you didn't say that yet.
What were you thinking?
I'll say it once we go off the air.
Okay.
Teaser for those who are listening. Shawn is not a big fan of old speakers.
Yeah, me neither. But I do like them, but there's problems with them. So I do have enough. All right, let's get to one fun one. Okay, Shawn, you're stranded on a tropical island, and you have to pick one other karate YouTuber to be stuck with you. Obviously, me and Derek are already there. I know I already went ahead and assumed that we were the first 2 karate YouTubers you picked. So who was the third?
Who was the third? Let's see. Are there any female karate YouTubers?
Ooh, that's actually a good thought.
Like I don't even care, but I love you guys, but come on now.
Yeah.
We're stranded on an island.
He's trying to.
There's only so much karate we can talk, right?
I think in Shawn's situation, like the world is ended, he needs to repopulate the world.
This is going so wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. And we don't have hair or anything, so it's a bad situation.
So here, let's rephrase that question so that we don't have to go that route.
Right. There you go.
So it's Rob and I and you on a deserted island, and we're gonna have complex, thoughtful discussions about car audio. So who would be your choice?
Okay. That's a very interesting question. I have to put the whole scenario together though, right? Because we're stranded on an island for however long. We're all smelly, we're all tired, right? I mean, I'm not imagining some tropical, like I'm picturing like Survivor Man type scenario. I think I'd have to say Doug. I have to say Doug because I think he could make us laugh.
Yeah,
and we might need that. We might need a little I don't know, a little
insanity in the same world.
I'm glad you said it.
But on the island, so I'm gonna tell Doug you picked him because we're gonna have him on soon. But I wonder how long until we would want to kill Doug.
Yeah, you know it's funny because like I could picture myself working with Doug. If I look back at my install days, I had a lot of the same type of, I don't know how to say, like the same type of mentality. And I always try to have fun at work. I always, it was important, but also goof off, have fun. So when I see him in his videos, like acting the way he acts, I'm like I would love to work with him. I think it would be fun.
That's how it is. I think Alfrego's got a spin. I can't even deny Big D's the skipper. I'm Gilligan and Shawn's the professor.
You are too much. We also got a bass junkie. Thank you, bass junkie.
Oh, it was cold here today as well.
Oh, it snowed?
Wow.
The wind was blowing here like crazy today. It was like we were at the beach.
Here too.
Yeah.
It's like 30 degrees this morning.
Oh, it's supposed to be getting freezing tonight, so it's coming this way to the East Coast.
Wow.
All right.
Let's see. Yeah, is there any other fun ones?
I have some, but you go ahead and.
No, you go ahead. You're on a roll, man. Keep going.
Okay, so.
Who gets eaten first?
What's your go-to track once you've completed a system, and why is it Spanish Harlem?
It's okay. This Ariana Grande, by the way, you don't have to be shy. We're all friends here, and even the people that are listening that don't agree with me, sorry.
I just purchased an Ariana Grande song on iTunes, so I'm with you. I honestly, okay, so I know Spanish Harlem. Obviously, I've listened to it plenty of times. I really don't have a particular song. I really don't. It's whatever has been my most recent purchase from iTunes, and it's on my phone. And I typically use my phone when I actually listen to the system afterwards. Are you talking about like amplifier repair, or are you talking about like an install?
Like a install. Like
like an install.
You've spent all the time.
Okay, I got you.
And you're wanting to see what it sounds like. What do you throw in?
Okay, I got you. I mean, I have a few. I have a few that I have to,
Baby Got Back.
No, it's a classic, but no. Okay. So some of my favorites are Madonna Immaculate Collection. Multiple songs on that CD. That's got to be one. Higher Love by Steve. Is it Steve Winwood?
Steve Winwood.
Yes.
Yep.
I got it. Okay. Actually, I think I recommended it to you, Rob.
You
like way back. Way back.
I've been using it ever since, by the way.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I still use that. I love that track. Some Michael Jackson. The recordings are phenomenal. I don't know. There's some others, but those are definitely what come to mind right off the bat.
Shawn, have you tried Tidal? The service called Tidal, Tidal. I just signed up for it recently. They offer uncompressed tracks. And in addition, some artists offer master quality, which, a CD is 1411 kilobits per second is CD quality. They offer some that are 9,500 kilobits per second. So okay. I was just curious because I got it for me for doing some of this testing to see, hey, can I really tell the difference here,
right.
Between a literal, master quality stream versus Spotify, which is what I typically use. But I didn't know if you tried it out. You get 30 days free if you want to try it. Okay. But after that, the master version is $20 a month. Gotcha. If you want to get the highest end one, which and Rob, I told you guys both need to try it, and we'll have to report back at a later date just to see, because I'm curious, what other people think other than me about the quality of those streams that you get.
I think it might be limited to your equipment as well, like what
of course,
Bluetooth
but
codecs
still.
you have, and 80 A2 DP2 and all this nonsense.
Yeah. So when I finished Brad's install, of course he had that big bad boy Zapco processor, the new one that does all the HD. I'm trying to remember. It's like I want to say it was. I downloaded some music online that was high bit rate, and I might be wrong, but I want to say it was like 24-bit, 192 kilohertz. Does that sound right? Being
192.
Yeah, that's like considered pretty high end, right?
That's better than CD quality, I believe.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that I got it right then, and I had to put it on a thumb drive.
Yeah.
And plugged it right into the DSP, and it sounded really good, but I didn't have anything like a CD to compare it to. So.
Yeah. I noticed Jesse's comment too, and I was gonna say I hadn't played around with the Amazon stuff either. Interface, that's interesting because the Tidal interface doesn't look bad, and with Amazon's website, wow, they have a better interface than somebody else on something.
It's so like I'm so invested in Spotify, not just dollar wise, but like my playlists are on there.
Oh, of course.
I know the interface. I just can't see myself ever switching. Yeah. And Spotify has high res options now.
Yeah, they do. But again, and somebody made the comment too in the chat that what's the guarantee that even these master quality ones are truly master quality, not upsampled? Because some of those HD track sites and stuff like that have gotten caught by upsampling a standard CD quality to 2496 or 24192 or whatever, and saying, "Oh, this is HD quality," and in essence, really upsampling the original. What good is that? That's like taking a JPEG and making it blowing it up and trying to make it better.
Yeah, but you're right. We do need, like, we're the guys that kind of need to test this and
Complete sham. Look at that.
Yeah, I need to check that out.
Wow. BB, can you post that? Can he post the link, or at least post the title of the video? I want to go watch that. Well, that's good. I've still got like 20 more days before I can cancel that. If it's not good and people say it's a sham, then
wait a minute. Is the HD tracks, are they free with Prime?
Is the HD tracks free with Prime? That is a great question.
If it is, I'm certainly using it because, I mean, who doesn't have
doubt.
Prime?
We'll be all up on that.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to get sidetracked. I was just curious if you guys had gone, tried any of those services. Because, Sean, you said you use Apple Music. Do you use Spotify at all?
No, I don't. No.
Okay.
You're an Apple Music guy?
Well, it's not. I don't even really use Apple Music. I purchase. Maybe I know I'm old school, but I purchase. Yeah. I mean, I use Apple, but not Apple Music or Apple Radio or whatever they call it.
Yeah. You do the one where you just buy what you want, and then
I just buy the particular song.
Sean, I got an extra spot on my Spotify, man. I got the family plan because we all listen to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Spotify is. All I can say
it's
is
not I won't say it's the best quality as far as bitrate, but it's just solid. It's solid all the way around.
It is solid, and it's got almost
my wife uses it, so I'm
everything that you could imagine. It's like your own jukebox of infinity to be able to choose what you want to listen to. I mean, I pay for the family plan too. It's $16 a month. There's Nick saying that Amazon HD is $12.99 a month.
Yeah,
it's I don't know what it is, but I've always wanted to buy my CDs, buy my DVDs, buy my music, even though it is Apple. I mean, it is still at least on my phone. I don't know. It's something about it.
Well, it's very, it's important to understand because we lost internet connection a few weeks ago. It was on a Friday. I had just finished work, signed off, and internet dropped. So it doesn't hit you until your internet is no longer connected, which you cannot do. Yeah. So obviously no Netflix, no YouTube TV. We don't have cable, so we didn't have any way to get any of that. So you know what we did? We went to the DVDs and Blu-rays and pulled them out, and we watched a couple of movies, and that was really the only thing we could do because the kids couldn't use their iPads or whatever, to get on play their games and stuff, because a lot of those games require an all-time connection. So I agree with you. There are times when having the physical is important, but the other thing to remember is, like, if you use Amazon Prime and you purchase a movie through Amazon Prime, are you really purchasing the movie?
Right, I remember you talking about this, right?
You're purchasing the license to use the movie. That is not your movie. There, at any time they can go back in there and pull that out. So having the physical disc, even though you could break it or drop it or scratch it or whatever, if you take care of it, then you can always use it as long as you can have a playback device that can play it. Because how many things have CDs on them anymore, right?
Well, and I'm the guy that I'm always preaching convenience over fidelity, but I won't buy a head unit in my vehicle, or I won't put an aftermarket one that does not have a CD player in it. If it doesn't have a CD player, I'm not going to mess with it.
I'm the same.
Well, it's a good reason too, to get the cell phones that have a lot of storage, or either get the ones that have the chips that you can put in. I know the Apple ones, you just have to buy them like a 512 or a 256, because then even with Spotify, you can download, not just have your playlist, you can actually download it to your device. So when you go and you're driving around and you all of a sudden lose internet, doesn't matter because you're still connected. It just has to beacon in once every few days or something to, they won't let you keep it on there forever, disconnected from the internet, but that's important. Blu-ray copy of Brad. Yes, we have Blu-ray copies of Brad, and they've actually released that, I think, on...
I got a copy.
I think they've released it on Amazon. They actually released an LP as well.
I got Rad right here.
Sure does. I don't know how he got that. I have no idea.
I found it. I stubbed my toe on it. I was like, oh, it's a copy of Rad on a USB drive.
Sean, you probably don't care anything about that dumb movie. And
I've seen Rad. Yeah, I was into BMX when I was a kid.
Well, I mean,
yep,
it was okay. All right, I'm not going to be a fanboy and say
it's not like there was a lot to choose from.
No, back then it was literally nothing.
There's a lot of bad movies I like from the era. Breakin'.
Mm-hmm.
I even like Breakin' 2, The Electric Boogaloo. Rad. There is a lot. There's a lot.
Gleam of the Cube. Now I never watched that back in the day, but somebody told me about it. I watched it. I was like, that was actually a pretty good movie. Even Christian Slater, I think, was in that one. You remember that one? It was more of a skateboarder type movie in the 80s versus Rad being a bike movie. Yeah. Check it out. Gleaming the Cube.
Did you ever watch the Lords of Dogtown, the original one?
No.
I think I've seen that. Pretty sure I have.
Dude, that's got to be on the list. That's an excellent movie. It's not that old. It's like 2000 and something, but it's great.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen that.
Yeah, I need a list. I'm still waiting for Stranger Things season 4. When that comes on, don't expect me to put a video out that week because I'm gonna be watching all 13 or 15 or however many episodes.
I really love that show, but it's getting it started so high and it's just progressively getting worse and worse. I'm still gonna watch it.
Where can you go? But those guys are so creative. I mean, they're from North Carolina too. Not trying to say anything, but the Duffer Brothers are Chapel Hill. Even though I don't know that I would give all that credit for Chapel Hill.
I didn't watch that.
Well, speaking of the movie thing, since we're talking about it, and not to stop talking to Sean because he's still engaged here, but somebody on this triangular shaped, V-shaped, whatever you want to call it, video that you're watching, those who are watching, one of us here has actually started another YouTube channel where they're going to talk about movies.
It's a good idea.
It's going to be an after show. We typically talked on it Thursdays on Reverse Polarity. Me and Dean would talk movies and TV shows the first 20 minutes. But now we decided, hey, people want to hear car audio. We'll do that. Then we'll just do an hour of movies directly after on its own channel. So we're going to the first movie we're going to review. Dean's already picked it out. I think it's a great movie for guys like us. It's called The Sound of Metal. A musician loses his hearing and he has to struggle through finding his way back.
Oh, wow.
After losing his hearing.
I haven't seen that. Sound of Metal.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Oh, okay.
And Sean, if you ever want to be on, man, just holler. We'll announce the movies a week beforehand. So everyone kind of knows and we'll just chill, discuss it.
All I can say is don't invite me for like Pulp Fiction. There's a few on there that some people think are the best movies ever that I'm like, really? You like that? Sorry. But there's other ones probably that I like, Dumb and Dumber, that a lot of people don't like. So, hey, different.
I love movies. I both my wife and myself, we love movies. So.
Yeah. There's a bunch, like, especially if you got HBO Max, they're showing, like, they're not good movies, but they're direct to HBO Max and the movie theaters, Kong versus...
Mortal Kombat's coming out in a few days.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
I'm going to check that out, too, instantly.
Yeah, and I think they stream through HBO Max in at least 5.1. I don't know if they do Atmos. They may do Atmos, but they do... Their audio is really good through that as well. So if you have a receiver that's capable of that and processing, it's definitely worth it to get that. I think when I got it, I got like whatever the 6-month package was. You could buy 6 months of it for like $79 or something. That's what I did when it first came out.
I have AT&T internet and they just pay for it.
Oh,
that's even better.
Oh, nice.
They sent me that fiber.
Hey, they sent me a letter and it was like, you can get HBO Max for free. And I thought it was like, 3 months free. It's like, no, they just pay it. You sign in with your AT&T. I was like, yes.
Nice. Very nice.
That was funny. F. Fuggis says, Dumb and Dumber, you mean 12-volt talk?
Oh.
Oh, got him.
Oh man, appreciate you coming on again though, Sean.
We didn't get to no. Hold on, we didn't get to triple Darlington. I've got to know before we drop.
Maybe next time.
Before Rob turns into a freaking zombie.
Yeah. I want Sean just be like marketing.
And then take his microphone and do this. Just drop it.
Mic drop. Honestly, Rob, you're on point. You're really on point. It's marketing. I mean, okay, so there is some legitimacy to it. Obviously, they marketed it. Obviously.
Well, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but at the same time, they also marketed Class A, given the impression these amplifiers were Class A instead of what they really were.
Okay, so first, let's talk about real briefly. We'll talk about Class A and when a company will brand their amplifiers Class A. So they can actually legitimately do that, and the reason is because. So I want, like, back when we were talking about the 3-stage amplifier, the 3 stages of the amplifier, we kind of skipped over a couple portions of it. I was going to talk about the voltage amplifier section, which the voltage amplifier section runs in Class A. That's what it is. It's always biased on. And so so that portion of the 3-stage amplifier is running in Class A. So technically, if you want, you could say every single amp out there is running in Class A. There are a couple differences. There are a couple amplifiers that are running a mirror image, which is a little bit different, but so many of them are running a full Class A voltage amplifier stage. Or you can even look at it as a Class AB is biased in the Class A region for at least a small amount, right? So for a very small portion of the sinusoidal wave, both transistors for your positive rail and your negative rail are turned on at the same time. And you can call that Class A if you want. They're both turned on. So at least for a given amount of power, it could be 1/10 of a watt or 1/2 a watt or something like that. The amplifier is in Class A. So if they want to say it, they can say it. It obviously doesn't mean that your output stage is Class A, and that's where the big difference is going to be. So the Darlington, okay, and the Soundstream amplifiers in particular, I like to pick that brand because they're the ones that kind of boast about it the most in the past. The Darlington Transistor in the output stage of a Soundstream, the older Soundstream amplifiers, it's actually 2 transistors in one case. Okay, it'll look just like a normal 3-prong transistor, but there's on the inside there's actually 2 transistors. So when we're talking about Class AB amplifiers, the majority of them will have, on the output stage, you'll have an output transistor, you'll have a driver that drives that output transistor, and you'll have a pre-driver, which drives the driver of the output transistor. And that's 3, right? That's your triple. So in that configuration, it's called an output triple, or you could look at it as a triple Darlington. In the Soundstreams in particular, that one transistor that they use is a Darlington transistor. So it's 2 of the triple in one case. It's just a little bit different.
I got you. This is an important comment too. Kyle says, with amplifiers, can't believe people say they pay for a name brand and have no clue. So with that statement, I think we can easily state that the name brands that we brought up earlier that we were talking about, the Rockford Fosgates, the Kickers, the audio controls, the JLs, they're not cookie cutter. Okay. A lot of the other brands out there, they could be buying some of the design from China or Korea, or they could be taking one that you can get off Alibaba and putting some stickers on the caps, as Kyle says. That is true. However, I will say this. In the case of some of the brands that I deal with, Down for Sound being one, there are stickers on the caps. The designs are based off of a generic Class D design. However, they have been massaged. They have been upgraded based on technicians and input from engineers on what they can do to take this yard that somebody hasn't mowed in a while and make it look really nice. So in other words, they are modifying the existing to make it better. So that statement, although true, is not true across the board. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, and then sometimes they get really insidious. Dean talked about this on reverse polarity, where there was that manufacturer or a what did Kip call it? What was the Kipism for the manufacturer? Manufacturer.
Perfect.
And they were getting the Burr Brown op out. What is it? Op amp?
Op amp.
Op
Yeah.
amps,
But you needed another piece to make that work, right? But they just got the Burr Browns. They didn't get the other piece. So the Burr Browns aren't actually working like they should be, but they get to write on their
that it includes the Burr Brown function. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Marketing.
So they think just
what's interesting? We keep talking about marketing, and what is Kip in?
Yeah. Well, that's why he's got so many Kipisms.
That's right.
But I do have I had one question, Sean, when you brought up about the Class A bias, and tell me if I'm crazy here, but a lot of amps that I thought sounded pretty good had a high idle current pool. My thinking was that maybe they had a heavy Class A bias, but I could be totally or a heavier Class A bias than some other amps. How crazy am I?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, there's kind of some legitimacy to it. If something is very high bias, it basically means when the amplifier is resting, both your P channel or both your NPN and your PNP transistors are turned on at the same time. They're both on. Okay, and for a given point of this, again, going back to what I was saying before, a given point of the sine wave, they're both on. Okay, so there's no, how do I want to say this? You don't have to worry about any distortion from the other transistor turning off during that portion of the sine wave. So at a very low power, which certainly can be perceived from us, very low power, you can hear plenty of audio coming through at like a half a watt or something like that, right? And you can certainly bias an amplifier to the point where you can get a half watt of output and listen to music essentially in Class A mode, right? So the argument comes in of, can you really hear when you're not in Class A mode? When one transistor is taking care of the positive half and the other transistor is taking care of the negative half, can you really hear that transition when one is taken over for the other one?
Yeah. I do that. I do that with a ton of stuff. Like, I think a lot of people do this. You have some sort of bias that you may not actively be seeking, but it's just, I think that, so in my mind, that may make the amp sound better just because I think this. And or if I spend $600 on a pair of coaxial RCA cables for my car, I'm going to think, hey, even though these are not rejecting as much noise as a simple twisted pair, in my mind, I'm like, hey, these cost more. They should probably sound better.
I had a good friend of mine back home that was just like that. I mean, he bought, multi-$100 cables and stuff like this for his car, and he swore up and down that it was the greatest stuff and it made all the difference. And I'm like, okay, good for you.
Don't we call that psychoacoustics?
Psychoacoustics.
Right? So you hey, but I mean, part of the fun is, you thinking something sounds better because of either how it looks or how much you paid for it.
Yep.
I've been honestly,
there,
what's wrong
sure.
with it? Nothing wrong with
I've
it.
been there.
Yeah.
Confirmation bias.
There's nothing wrong with it unless, okay, I guess there.
Until you're beating somebody over the head with it, with your confirmation bias.
Well, I mean, at the same time, too, there's nothing wrong with it, but there's also some ignorance that comes into play. If you don't do your research, like there are optimal patch cables, whether your amplifier is single-ended or if it's a differential input. There are so if you buy a $600 single-ended RCA cable, when your amplifier has a differential input, it doesn't matter how much you spent. You didn't buy the optimal cable for your amplifier, right? So
yeah, I've had that argument.
It'll work, but
I've had the argument even with, on a twisted pair, people like, well, you can just buy cheapest one. No, you can't, because there's you need a quality solder joint, you need a quality end. There has to be a level of quality. Once you reach that point of quality, diminishing returns just literally fall off a cliff. But
diminishing returns is definitely a real thing, very much so. Yeah,
you can't say, if you say his name twice, three times.
Yep. Yeah, I think we said it 3 times. Hey, Kip. We didn't rag on you too bad, but just don't go back like 30 minutes, 2 minutes and listen?
2 minutes.
Yeah. No, it wasn't about you specifically. It was just marketing in general.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you'll hear it in the replay.
What was it again? The packager?
Manufacturer.
Manufacturer. We use that Kipism. We got to write these down, dude.
Yeah, we got to write them down and let him trademark them so we can give him a quarter every time we say them or something. Man, that was fun. Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez, we went through a lot of time. Those we're like 40 minutes over what we typically go. And jeez. That was a good chat. I hope guys who were watching enjoyed that, because I sure did.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm leaving this in the audio too now, so
yeah, we're gonna keep this one all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Here's one good one from Matt. So we know Nichicon for sure.
Helmet.
Yeah. Right. One of my favorites is Nichicon. So when it comes to I guess this will be a little rant, and it leads right into it. Perfect. So when I see guys that, like DIY guys, that will like recap their amplifiers, and they use quote unquote audio grade caps or the fine gold caps, and they'll put them throughout the entire amplifier. Like that's not good. That's not what you want to do. An audio grade amplifier is not good for filtering a switching power supply, or for your rails or anything like that. You don't want to use that capacitor for your power supply. An audio grade capacitor should be used in the audio path, right? So you need to know the layout of the amplifier and put those specific capacitors in the audio path. That's what they were designed for. There are capacitors that are designed for high frequency switching, and there's all kinds of different designations where you put certain capacitors. You can't just plaster a whole amplifier with one particular cap, even if it says audio on it. It's not really ideal. But Elna's a good cap for audio, and they do actually make other caps for power supplies and stuff like that. But like I like to use Elna in the audio path. I like to use Nichicon Muse in the audio path. I use Nichicon PW, PWM series for almost everything else. So it's just a good overall, good quality capacitor.
Does Panasonic still make caps?
They do. Yep, they do.
Are you still from everybody that's old school knows Phoenix Gold had a bad run of Panasonic caps.
Right.
And now I bet it's so hard. Like I'm not going to buy a Panasonic cap to even use it.
I have to admit I use the newer ones.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I do. Time will tell. I mean, I actually, it's been So I use those Panasonic capacitors in my ZPA amps in the Accord. And it's got to be over 10 years that I did that, 10, 12 years ago that I did that. And I don't see any signs of the new ones leaking. Yeah. So hopefully they hold together better than the old ones.
Yeah, that system, I'm very sad that you tore that system down.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite all-time sounding systems.
No doubt.
Appreciate it.
Bass Junkie,
and I say that just
again.
recently coming from SQology too, so.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
These guys are just peppering.
Oh, man.
Thank you, Kip. Thank you, Bass Junkie.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys rock. Well, guys, Rob got his shot today, so he's getting ready to turn full zombie mode. So we need to let him go do that. Shawn, thanks, man. This has been a fun show. Lots of knowledge transferred to people. Sorry,
D's tired. We'll give him a pass on that one.
D is tired this week. It's been a rough week already, but we're gonna make it. So, I think we're going to go ahead and sign off for tonight. Again, make sure you check if you're listening to the podcast here on your favorite podcasting app. Make sure you check out our YouTube stream because you do have video. Tonight, we didn't really show any graphical representation, so it may not be a big benefit to you to watch it because you have to see my ugly face. But, yeah, in a lot of occasions, you'd want to watch the video part too if you can. But we do appreciate you guys watching, listening, or however you're enjoying the content. And I saw a couple more come up before we sign off. Kyle, thank you so much.
I appreciate it,
and
man.
Scott from Power Hog, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. And Kip and Mark from Cardio Fabrication and all of our normals, which I can't go through everybody, but Deviant and 25 Hertz to Life and Brandon, Bass Junkie, Ken Alexander, RVH, Jesse Strom, Nick Fountain, Tom, Brian. Thank you guys as always. Edud for hanging out with us. There's one that I can't say the name because it's not appropriate, but he's always here too. So thank you.
Yeah.
And we're just going to sign out. So we'll be back next week. Hopefully we will have Doug from Soundman next week. Yeah. That's the plan. So tomorrow, you guys tune in next week.
Reverse polarity, Hafa Vega.
Oh, yes. Sorry. So that's tomorrow, right?
Yep, tomorrow, 7:30.
Tomorrow, Cardio Fab is going to be on reverse polarity with Rob and Dean. So we'll have to make sure we check that one as well. Fun times.
That's it.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Until then, thanks again, Shawn, and we will talk with y'all later.
Later.
Peace out.